The fall of Bashar Assad in Syria. And unbelievably, Joe Biden takes credit. Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, this is one of the biggest stories, not just in the world, but in many ways, it is history in the making. Over the weekend, the house of Bashar Assad fell. It was overthrown in a massive lightning offensive by al-Qaeda jihadist rebels. And what is incredible, my friends, is not just that the Assad dynasty, which has ruled over Syria for over 50 years, the father, Hafez Assad, the son, Bashar Assad, have ruled that country with an iron fist for over half a century. But my friends, we are now witnessing the unfolding of another Afghanistan. American troops, over 900 of them, are now trapped inside Syria with little protection, little fortification. They are sitting ducks. The United States had to conduct massive airstrikes over the weekend to try to limit ISIS, which is now also gaining momentum with the power vacuum left by the fall of Bashar Assad and his dictatorial regime. So here is exactly now what is taking place, my friends. As I wrote on X last night, while our corrupt and frankly stupid, I'm sorry, there's just no other way to put it, our incredibly ignorant and stupid media and political elites, and especially the media, who are cheering on the downfall of Assad and the rising now to power of al-Qaeda rebels. Al-Qaeda, the group now, the major faction that has now seized power in the capital of Syria, Damascus, is literally an al-Qaeda group that calls for Sharia law, jihadism within Syria, a Muslim Sunni radical Islamist state, for the slaughter of all Christians within Syria, for the slaughter of others and other minority groups. And apparently now, as Biden took a victory lap yesterday, he is bragging that our CIA, essentially the Brennan CIA, armed and funded these jihadist Islamist al-Qaeda rebels, along with Turkey. And I'm going to get to Turkey in a second, because Turkey now is playing a massive role in the overthrow of Assad and in putting now a client state in power in Damascus. But for our purposes, what ultimately matters is that now the very Islamists, the very terrorist group responsible for 9/11, responsible for the deaths of over 3,000 Americans, are now in Damascus, and they are ransacking the presidential palace. They have now controlled every branch and institution of the government. Their jihadist paramilitaries are now on the streets of Damascus firing guns into the air. And now the age of Islamism is back in Syria. And so, over the last 11 days, here is exactly what took place. With Russia now bogged down in a war in Ukraine, with Iran now having seen its top proxies, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, suffer massive, huge damage in Israel's defensive war after October 7, with Iran itself now severely weakened, rebels in the north of Syria, supported and armed by Biden's CIA and Brennan's CIA, along with Turkey's Erdogan. And these, as I said, are stone-cold Islamist killers, launched a lightning offensive 11 days ago. and they met little to no resistance. They first seized the northern city of Aleppo. From Aleppo, they went to Hama. Like dominoes, they fell. Then to Homs. And before you knew it, by the weekend, Damascus itself, the ultimate prize, fell to Al-Qaeda and the Islamists. Bashar Assad and his family fled Syria yesterday morning to Russia, who has now offered them asylum. The Assad regime is now over. It has collapsed. It has been toppled, deposed, and ousted. And Joe Biden yesterday addressed the American people, and I swear to you, bragged that Assad is gone and that Al-Qaeda, known there in Syria as HTS, that's the name of the Al-Qaeda affiliate, the main rebel faction, is now the de facto ruler of that country. Roll cut one, Mike.
What happened in the Middle East? After 13 years of civil war in Syria, more than half a century of brutal authoritarian rule by Bashar Assad and his father before him, rebel forces have forced Assad to resign his office and flee the country. We're not sure where he is, but there's word that he's in Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen.
He then went on to say that he admitted, he said, no, we played a big part in this. No, we wanted these rebels to come to power. No. We backed them. We funded them. We armed them. Hell, I helped do it. I'm Joey. And then, unbelievably, he then said, there's an historic opportunity now for the people of Syria. Roll cut 1A, Mike.
This regime brutalized and tortured and killed literally hundreds of thousands of innocent Syrians. The fall of the regime is a fundamental act of justice. It's a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future for their proud country. It's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks.
This is incredible. I mean, honestly, this is incredible. Now, look, there's no question. Assad was a murderous tyrant, a butcher, a dictator. No question about it. And it's not that, Jeff Kuhner is mourning the fall of Assad. Quite the contrary. But we haven't learned a thing in the Middle East? What's going to come after Assad is going to be even worse. What came after Gaddafi in Libya was worse. What came after Saddam in Iraq was worse. The Arab Spring of 2011 that Obama encouraged. Yes, dictators were overthrown like Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, but what did they get? They got the Muslim Brotherhood. In other words, all you ended up doing was empowering Islamist fanatics and extremists, even bigger murderers, even bigger mass murderers and torturers than the secular dictators that were overthrown. Now, in particular, the rebel group now, there are many rebel groups, there are many factions, but the dominant one is Al-Qaeda in Syria. They just changed their name. In fact, their leader, and he looks like he's going to be now the incoming leader of Syria, is himself a disciple of Osama bin Laden. He is himself a longtime Al-Qaeda jihadist who now is hoodwinking the West the way the Taliban did. If you remember, when the Taliban seized power in 2021, after we withdrew all of our U.S. forces, and then the Taliban launched another lightning offensive, and the government forces melted in the face of that offensive, What did the Taliban say? Oh no, we will not seek retribution against anybody who worked with the United States or the previous government. Oh no, we respect women's rights. No, we're going to have a free media. And we all know how that turned out. It has been a disaster for the people of Afghanistan. The same thing applies now to Syria. It will now become a radical Islamist Sunni state run by Al-Qaeda that is going to be exporting terrorism and jihadism not just across the region, but across the world. And more immediately, we have 900 U.S. troops, like in Afghanistan before, that are now trapped. They are pinned down with limited help and support. And Joe Biden now is desperately trying to launch airstrikes to make sure that our boys aren't slaughtered because they're sitting ducks. My friends, you are now watching another Afghanistan unfold and the rise of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. These people are insane. 619 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Kuhner country, do not believe the propaganda that is coming now from the so-called establishment elite media and from the political elites in our country. They are complicit in what is happening in Syria, and it is an absolute crime, a crime against humanity, a crime against the people of Syria, and ultimately a crime against the people of America, Europe, and the West. And as I said on X, and I will now say it again, the fact now that Al-Qaeda has come back to power, this time in Syria, America and Europe will rue the day. And that is literally the main faction, they're called HTS, that has now taken over the Syrian government. They have ransacked the presidential palace. In fact, they're already committing massive atrocities against people they suspect were loyal to Assad. This is now a 13-year civil war that is finally coming to an end. Now, if you look at the pockets of Syria in which HTS, this Al-Qaeda rebel faction that has now won the civil war, they have been backed by our CIA, in fact, Biden's CIA, to be specific, and Turkey. They have committed massive violations against women, against Christians, against Yazidis, against minorities, and their slogan is the Alawites to Tehran. The Alawites are like a Shiite sect. The Alawites to Tehran, the Christians to the wall, meaning you line them up and you shoot them. So this idea now that Syria is going to become a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, tolerant, diverse country is an absolute lie. It is the same playbook over and over. Al-Qaeda now runs much of Libya. The Islamists now run much of Iraq. I could go country after country. The Taliban is back in power fully in Afghanistan. And now Syria has fallen. And the bigger danger is that this was so quick. It was such a lightning offensive. The government of Assad shriveled and melted away so quickly that it caught everyone off guard, including, by the way, the Biden regime. And so we now have just slightly over 900 troops, American troops. They are located primarily in eastern Syria. They have very little protection. We have one military base. It is completely exposed. They are sitting ducks. ISIS is now running wild. Al-Qaeda now has won its most significant victory since 9/11. They didn't just forget Afghanistan. Syria is a strategic beachhead in the heart of the Mediterranean. And this is now the country that Al-Qaeda will be governing, or at least much of it. Handed to them on a silver platter by Biden's CIA. Now, is this a blow to Russia? No question. Russia spent a lot of money. They sent a lot of Russian troops. A lot of Russians died. A lot of Russian mothers were grieving and burying their sons back in Mother Russia. And now Syria, the Assad regime that Putin propped up, that the mullahs also tried to prop up, has now completely collapsed. So this is a massive blow to Russia's prestige, Russia's influence, Russia's authority. It is also a massive blow to the mullahs in Tehran. So this is going to have massive regional implications. But my primary concern is our troops, our men and women, and our interests. And yes, Assad was a monster, no question. He was a vicious, vicious dictator and criminal. But as Donald Trump rightly said on Truth Social yesterday, stay out of Syria. It is not our fight. It is a viper's nest. And instead, Biden has gotten us now directly involved by arming, funding, and supporting this Al-Qaeda rebel movement and launching them into power. And now, as I speak to you, American airstrikes are pounding central Syria, and our troops now are completely exposed and vulnerable. I don't want them to be held hostage. I don't want them to be kidnapped. I don't want them to be attacked. I don't want to see a repeat of what happened at Abbey Gate at the airport in Kabul, where 13 Marines were slaughtered by an Al-Qaeda ISIS terrorist. And let me just make one final point, and then I want to open it up to you. 617-266-6868 is the number. What is to me incredible is that this regime, the Biden regime, in order to hand Trump a mess, in order to do maximum damage to him and his incoming administration, has now handed to him a country in complete turmoil, in complete chaos, in which our mortal enemies, remember, whatever you think about Bashar Assad, he was not an enemy of the United States. We have now handed our mortal enemies Al-Qaeda not just a massive victory, but one of the most important countries in the Middle East. This was treason and betrayal of the highest order. 6:30 on the break, WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. You know, Sandy made a very, very good point to me while we were off air. Biden yesterday addressing the country following the fall of the Bashar Assad regime in Syria. And apparently now Assad and his family have fled to Russia, where Putin has granted them asylum. That Biden is looking at this as his legacy. He wants a legacy. And he thinks his legacy will be, you know, I'm Joey. I helped to bring down the dictator Bashar Assad. But he's not seeing what comes next. You know, as Sandy, I thought, said in a very, funny way, he doesn't play chess. Hell, he doesn't even play backgammon. Forget checkers. So he doesn't see, or he doesn't care what comes next. Yes, it's easy to cheer the fall of Assad. Of course, who the hell wants Assad in power? I mean, the man's a butcher. But what if what comes next is infinitely worse? Has anybody thought of that? And especially that it would be our mortal enemies, Al-Qaeda. That, to me, is what's absolutely shocking. Now, let me just say one final thing, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617-266-6868. The question, and to me, the only question that matters to us. Now, If I'm a Christian in Syria, I'm telling you right now, I'm getting the hell out of there. The Christians in Syria are going to be exterminated. Remember, Syria is one of the ancient strongholds of Christianity. If you read the Bible, I mean, it's, the road to Damascus conversion. I mean, Syria has some of the oldest Christian believers in the world, along with Egypt and North Africa, that entire area. The Christians now are going to get wiped out. The Yazidis now are going to be driven out of Syria. And the Alawites now are going to be facing massive recrimination. It is going to be an absolute bloodbath. You also have the Kurds in the in the northern part and the eastern part of the country that, by the way, are fighting ISIS. But now the Kurds are facing Turkish forces because the Turks now are going to impose their control over Syria. They're the ones really, along with our CIA, bankrolling Al-Qaeda and HTS as they now govern Syria, or try to. So the Kurds now are going to get crushed in northeastern Syria. So what you're looking at now is the complete fragmentation and disintegration of Syria. That is a very real possibility. And as I told Sandy, I said, Sandy, I don't know if you remember this or not, but Lebanon in the late 1970s, early 80s, it was always on the news, where it was all out. I know we've had civil war for 13 years in Syria, but what I'm talking about in Lebanon was almost like hundreds of different factions, all warring and squabbling with each other, and the country just being torn to pieces. This is now what may happen to Syria. The whole thing now can just ultimately fall apart, just completely fall apart. Now, for our interests, we don't want an Islamist Syria. And by the way, I would think Israel wouldn't want one either. Especially, remember, Bashar Assad had chemical weapons. Is Al-Qaeda now going to get their hands on these weapons? Are they going to get a hold of these chemical weapon stockpiles? Armored vehicles? Missiles? Combat planes? In the hands of Al-Qaeda, they can do tremendous damage. Not just to our interests, our people, our embassies in the Middle East, but they could hit Europe. God forbid they can hit us here. So an Islamist Syria is detrimental. It is, frankly, to me, completely against American interests. And more immediately, we've got to get our troops out. They are sitting ducks, and he's left behind nearly 1,000 of them. And with ISIS now running wild, Al-Qaeda now controlling the country, you've got Islamists now, paramilitary groups going crazy. Our troops now could get sucked in, not just into a civil war, but into now jihadist, terrorist atrocities. And they will come after our men and our women. We should not be getting involved in Syria. Yet, ironically, under Biden, we are now more involved than ever. We are now responsible for the jihadists who now govern, or at least rule, the capital and parts of the country. And I believe we are now Biden has made one of the biggest mistakes of his presidency. And he is going to hand Trump a mess. A mess. Pull our military base out. Get all of our troops out. Get the hell out of Syria. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Jay in Dorchester, you're going to kick us off. Thanks for holding, Jay, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, it's not Jay, it's Jimmy.
Jimmy, I'm sorry. Mike, I know it was Mike's an Alabama fan. Guy loves the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's really down this morning, Jimmy. They didn't make the college football playoff. So he's not himself today. I mean, Mike, for God's sake, Mike, snap out of it, my friend. All right, my apologies. Jimmy in Dorchester. Welcome, my friend.
Good morning, Jeff. I want to make 3 points. First is Syria. Remember in 2013, Obama and Biden was the vice president, Obama was the president. Remember they wanted to form a coalition to go into Syria because the rebels there, I remember Obama called them freedom fighters. He equipped them with weapons, but they were Al-Qaeda. He was sending weapons to our CIA with Al-Qaeda. And then in 2013, when he formed this coalition, because things were getting nasty over there, he only got 2 countries that would join this coalition. No part of Europe. Nobody wanted any part of Syria. At that time, they were under Iran, where they were loyal to Iran and Russia.
You know, you're completely right, Jimmy. Look, he called them freedom fighters. He was arming Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Obama was. And then if you remember, he drew a red line. This is all at the feet of Obama. Ultimately, this is Obama bears primary responsibility now for the absolute nightmare that is Syria. He then drew a red line saying Assad can't use chemical weapons. When chemical weapons were used, he didn't enforce his red line. But then, Jimmy, he invited the Russians. People forget that. Obama went to Putin and said, let's end the fighting together. Well, by inviting in the Russians, Putin jumped in, elbowed everybody else out, helped Assad win the civil war a couple years ago, and preserve these Russian bases that they have on the Mediterranean. And it led to a vicious, it was a slaughter. And it seemed like Assad was safe for a while. But now, the war in Ukraine has really weakened Russia. You can see that. I mean, this is a humiliating blow to the Russians. They may even lose their bases now in Syria. I can tell you this, at home, openly now in the media, Putin is being openly attacked and criticized for the fall of Assad and the fall of Syria. So this is a real blow to Putin, to the mullahs in Iran, to Hezbollah. You can see now Iran is badly weakened. And that was the vacuum that enabled Turkey and our CIA to join together to put Al-Qaeda back in power. But to me, Jimmy, what I can't wrap my mind around, why the hell would we want Al-Qaeda back in power? Have we forgotten 9/11 already? Have we forgotten the 3,000 dead already? You're going to let these medieval animals, these crazed jihadists, control a strategic country like Syria? Now, Israel is trying to minimize the impact. The last 48 hours, this is a story our media is barely covering. The Israelis have been launching hundreds of airstrikes. Strike after strike after strike in Syria, targeting munitions depots, weapons storages. They're trying to destroy these chemical weapons plants. They're trying to destroy these places where they believe missiles are being housed or armored vehicles. In other words, they want to give Al-Qaeda as little as possible as they now seize power. But they're not going to get everything. So there are chemical weapons stockpiles. They're going to get some of it. They're going to get armored personnel carriers. They're going to get missiles. They're going to get sophisticated equipment. And who do you think it's going to be used on? Initially, yes, on the Christians, on the other minorities. But believe me, you ask Al-Qaeda, their number one enemy, it's not even Israel, it's us. And we just gave them Syria on a silver platter. Jimmy, with nearly 1,000 troops, our men and women, sitting there, almost completely exposed in the desert. Final word to you, Jimmy.
A second point, Jeff. Israel is sending their forces to the Golden Heights as you're talking to me right now because they're afraid that something's going to happen with these rebels to be coming toward the Golden Heights.
You're right, the Golan Heights. Yeah, they've sent in their military. Look, privately, publicly, Netanyahu obviously is happy Assad is gone. Assad has been a lifelong enemy of Israel. But privately, he and his people are saying we may have something even worse. I mean, there's some serious anti-Semitic Jew haters that are now running Syria. Islamists, fundamentalists, extremists, lunatics. 649 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, history in the making, and it's going to have massive ramifications, not just in the Middle East, not just in Europe, but here and around the world. Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria has now fallen now to al-Qaeda Islamist rebels who now occupy the capital and large swaths of the country. Furthermore, ISIS is now reemerging within Syria. They now occupy at least chunks, about 4 chunks of territory within Syria. Turkey now is moving in as well. It is turning into an absolute disaster on every front. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, and by the way, Biden is trying to claim credit that this is somehow some great victory for freedom and democracy. You can text us 70470. This is from 917. Jeff, we are seeing the deliberate setting the world on fire to hamstring Donald Trump. Nothing could be more clear. And Obama is the arsonist. Bingo. Well, Syria was his baby. I mean, Obama was really the architect of the death, the destruction, the absolute collapse of Syria. And arming all of these rebels was his policy. And now they've achieved their goal. Islam now controls a major state between the Euphrates River and the Mediterranean. It is a massive victory for radical Islam. There's no other way to spin it. 617-266-6868. Okay, just super quick. Give me one more minute, and then I'm going to go back to the phone lines. The leader of Turkey, strongman dictator Recep Tayyip Erdogan, 11 days ago held a press conference in which he admitted that he was bankrolling and supporting many of these rebels. And he said, our goal is the fall of Assad. He openly said it. And he gave the green light to Turkey's terrorist proxies in Syria. Now, if you remember, the Turks are the ones who are behind the mass murder and ethnic cleansing of Armenian Christians in Nagorno-Karabakh. Erdogan is dreaming of an Ottoman Empire, a neo-second Ottoman Empire, controlled by Istanbul and Ankara, the capital. And so they've now made their move to supplant Russia and Iran as the big players in Syria and across much of the region. And so he helped bankroll a group, along with our CIA, a group called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. And it goes by HTS. Okay, HTS. They are an al-Qaeda affiliate. And they are the major rebel group. And they burst out from Idlib, which was their stronghold. And within 11 days, with Syria shattered after 13 years of fighting, with Iran now weak after being attacked by Israel repeatedly in strike after strike, with Hamas, its proxy, being decimated, Hezbollah, its other proxy, being crushed, the mullahs now were on the ropes and they could offer Assad no more assistance. He then appealed to Vladimir Putin. Putin, though, has lost hundreds of thousands of Russian troops. The fighting in eastern Ukraine is now more intense than ever. He is bogged down in Ukraine and told Assad, I can't do a thing for you. So, with his allies now disappearing, Assad, his government forces simply melted away. They capitulated. And yesterday morning, Assad, like a coward, fled Syria and is now safely in Moscow, according to reports, with his family. And now, the leader of HTS is a man known as Abu Mohammed al-Jolani. Okay, Jolani. Just remember Jolani. You're going to know this name. It's going to become a very prominent name. Jolani is a follower of Osama bin Laden. Jolani cut his teeth in the insurgency against Americans in Iraq. Jolani has murdered American soldiers and American troops in Iraq on behalf of Al-Qaeda. Jolani has our own State Department to show you how insane this all is. While Biden, our CIA, our State Department, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, our gullible, naive, frankly ignorant media, as they're cheering al-Jolani as the George Washington of the Mediterranean. I swear to you. Oh, it's a new day in Syria. Freedom, freedom. Our own State Department has a $10 million bounty on his head for international terrorism. This is the guy now that's running Syria, for God's sake. HTS is on our terrorism watch list. So the group that we armed, funded, and helped propel to power, along with the Turks, is a group that's not only tied to Al-Qaeda, they're on our own terrorist watch list. And that of Great Britain, and that of the European Union, and that of every other Western country, and that of Israel. And Joe Biden is taking a victory lap? Are you kidding me? I gotta say this. You know Obama's nickname for Joey, okay? It was the F up. Okay, the F up. And as he always told people around him, nobody could F something up like Joe Biden. This guy has so effed up Syria now. And God forbid, I hope it doesn't burn our troops there. We got to get our troops out of there. But he has so effed up Syria that I'm telling you, like the fall of Iran to the mullahs in 1979 under Carter, this is going to haunt us for decades to come. And my fear, I'm going to be brutally honest with you like I'm in the confessional. I hate to do this to you on a Monday morning. Okay, especially after I saw Trump in Europe, triumphant, doing that power handshake with Macron, everybody kissing his ring at the restoration of the Notre Dame Cathedral, where world leader after world leader after world leader was there, congratulating Trump. You can see Trump is back, America is back. I wanted to come in with a positive story today, believe me. There's a lot going on with Trump I'm very happy about. But then this happens. I'm like, this guy's unbelievable. January 20th can't come fast enough. This is going to haunt us for decades. And I just pray to God that our troops are not killed or maimed, and that as a result, there is not another 9/11. Controlling Afghanistan was one thing. You control Syria. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. This is insane. This is reckless. This is dangerous. I'm telling you, this is treason. The very terrorist, Islamist, jihadist group responsible for 3,000 dead Americans on 9/11 has now been put into power in Syria by our own government and our own CIA, along with Turkey, obviously. Okay, those scumbags, that sick, vile Erdogan regime. Okay, but let that go. And the media is celebrating this? Have you forgotten 9/11 already? Get our troops out before he gets more of our people killed. Agree, disagree. Should the United States get involved in Syria? Should it get further involved in Syria? And Joe Biden, as he now committed one of the greatest foreign policy debacles in American history. 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. Angelo in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Angelo, and welcome.
Hi, if I don't hear from you from Christmas, Merry Christmas. But anyway.
Merry Christmas. All the best to you and your family, Angelo.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, looking at this mess, it's unbelievable. So this is the squad with Obama, part of their plan, deep roots with these terrorists. Our 9/11, Israel's 9/11, has to be dealt with. And thank God for Israel, they do what they have to do. That being said, they threw another hand grenade here to start another bee's nest to take out the cleanup of Hamas over there. But America could definitely take care of the two fronts. What I want to say is they got to get our troops protected right now. Airstrikes alone, I don't think they're going to do it. They got to get boots on the ground, get our guys out, and clean up as they go. It's terrible we have to do that, but what are these people thinking? Yeah, and then don't forget, we got the squad and all these people entrenched in our government that are supporting these efforts against the United States and against the Christians. Let's face it. Let's say what it is. But I think that the good will rise here, and if they want to live in peace, we'll live in peace. If not, they're gonna see hell quick. Trump's around the corner, and clean up our government where you're at these treasonous people. And that's what I got to say.
Well, you know, Angelo, look. Yeah. This is the thing. I think they're trying to ambush Trump. This is going to be, they're trying to derail his agenda. And this is a tinderbox now they've created with Syria. There's no question now. I mean, the Russians are humiliated. The Iranians are humiliated. Somewhere out of the blue now, Turkey's become a major power. And Israel is now getting embroiled. And they want to get Trump mixed up in this mess. And he's got much bigger fish to fry. And that's what, interview with Kristen Welker, he made that very clear. He goes, I got to focus on our border. We got a massive invasion here. We're being overrun by illegals. I mean, he goes, we got cities now with crime exploding. We've got an economy now that is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. We've got high inflation, high interest rates. Middle working class people are really struggling. We've got a huge debt. I mean, Biden is the worst president we have ever had. It's not even close. And I just can't believe that, as Trump said, he goes, the world is out of control. His words, not mine. He goes, the world's crazy right now. The world is out of control. He goes, I don't know how many fires I'm going to have to put out when I come in. All this guy does is putting up more fires and more fires and more fires. Now, if I told anybody, hey, Bashar Assad is going to lose the war, people would say, okay, well, I don't love, who loves Bashar Assad? But Al-Qaeda is going to take over. People would say, oh my God, that's a geopolitical disaster. Well, that's just what happened. And instead, this idiot holds a press conference yesterday And he's bragging. He's showboating. He's celebrating. Ah, I did it. We did it. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Angelo, thank you very much for that call. Here's Joey. Here's Joey. Here he is. Roll cut 4D. Mike.
As I've said, this is a moment of considerable risk and uncertainty. But I also believe this is the best opportunity in generations for Syrians to forge their own future, free of opposition.
Right.
It's also an opportunity though it's far from certain, for a more secure and prosperous Middle East, where our friends are safe, where enemies are contained. And it would be a waste of this historic opportunity if one tyrant were toppled and only to see a new one rise up in its place.
Have we learned nothing? I mean, seriously, have we learned nothing? When we helped remove remember, that was Obama who did that. When we supported the so-called Arab Spring, and we helped remove Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. Remember him, the longtime strongman? What did the Egyptians get? They got the Muslim Brotherhood. They were worse than Mubarak. In every way, they were worse. We removed Gaddafi. What did we get? Literally, Al-Qaeda. Worse. We removed Saddam. What did we get? Worse. That's when ISIS appeared. Like, how many times do we have to keep doing this over and over and over again? So now we've removed Assad. Oh, this is an historic opportunity. It should be a shame if we wasted it. Well, why don't you look at the thug that you just helped put in power, al-Jolani? Look at what he did in Syria. Many years now. You know, parts of Syria have always been run by Al-Qaeda and his group. Look at what he does. He imposes Sharia law. Check. He denies women fundamental rights. Check. He cleanses and massacres every Christian, every Alawite, every Yazidi, every non-Sunni minority. Check. In fact, he enters Damascus. This was on the weekend. Okay, al-Jolani, the Al-Qaeda leader, the one that just now is ruling the country. He goes to an 8th century mosque, one of the oldest mosques in Syria, and surrounded by his jihadist thugs, terrorists, with their Kalashnikovs shooting in the air. Yee! And they're shooting in the air. And they're shooting in the air. And he turns around and he says, "We have now won a great victory for Islam," quote unquote, for the Muslim nation. And Syria will now become a true Muslim nation under Islamic law and Sharia law. So what do you think? You think what, this is going to be, I don't know, Sweden? Sweden on the Mediterranean? This is, oh yeah, he's going to be very tolerant. Oh yeah, very diverse. Oh yeah, No, hey, he's going to be respectful of every minority, religious, ethnic group. Oh yeah, sure. That's exactly what the Taliban said when they rolled into Kabul. And look at the place now. It's an Islamist hellhole. 617-266-6868 is the number. Vince in Germany. Thanks for holding, Vince, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff.
Vince.
So the saying goes, screw me once, shame on you, screw me twice, shame on me. And if the American people buy this BS, we deserve everything we get. I mean, it's plainly obvious that they are trying to rip the lid off the world before Trump takes office. So he's just left with an excrement sandwich, and we'll all have to take a bite. But what I want to say to you is, although this is concerning, and it came out of nowhere. It actually didn't come out of nowhere, because if you pay attention, all of this stuff has just been brewing. But what's most concerning is what's going on in Romania, where they basically overturned a legitimate election because they said it was Russia. And what they're trying to do is to goad the Russians into attacking Romania, which is a NATO country. What say you?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's Romania, it's Georgia. You can see the globalists are pressing on every single front. And they're very worried. You can see they're very worried about Trump coming to power. They're worried that their grip on power is now slowly slipping away. And they want to push Russia back as much as possible. But, to be brutally honest, though, Vince, look, I'm an American, okay? To me, the only interest I care about is the American interest, period, full stop. But I gotta say, the fall of Assad is no question a real body blow to Putin. He put so much of his regime's prestige behind propping up Assad. A lot of Russians were sent into Syria. Many of them came home in body bags. And Putin did it, I understand it, from his point of view, to defend, the Russian. They got a key naval base there, a key air base there, a warm water port on the Mediterranean, very important Russian strategic interests involved, and they don't want the Islamists taking over that country because it's going to hurt Russia. So that's why they kept propping up Assad. But, you put such an investment in the guy, and then when he's on the ropes and the rebels are launching this massive, blitzkrieg, and he goes and calls up Putin, Putin says, I've got nothing to give you because everything I have is in Ukraine. That shows that the war has taken a toll on Russia. And the Russians are bogged down as well. And in fact, Trump made that point. And I thought it was a very perceptive point. He goes, look, I met with Zelensky in France at the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. And he said, look, the fall of Syria, or the fall of Assad, shows that Putin is in a much weaker position. Zelensky has now told Trump that the Ukrainians are exhausted, that they want a peace deal. So Trump is now urging Putin, saying, hey, look, you're taking massive casualties. You just lost Syria. It could be much worse for you if this continues. You need a ceasefire. Zelensky needs a ceasefire. Sign a ceasefire and negotiate a peace deal. This could be Trump's moment right here, right now, to bring an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. 720 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Couple lines are open if you want to jump on. To me, my top concern right now is our troops. The troops that are now are about 900, almost 1,000 troops that are in Syria, particularly in the eastern part of the country, near where there's some ISIS pockets. And apparently over the weekend, sensing now that Assad's regime was teetering and eventually it fell yesterday, the Biden regime ordered at least 100 airstrikes, pounding certain ISIS positions, trying to contain the growth of ISIS as the Assad regime was overthrown and the Al-Qaeda rebels swept to power. Now, what I find incredible, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, is we have a base there on near the border with Jordan, but we have a U.S. military base in Syria. We've had troops in Syria for years. For years. And some of them are dying. Some of them are maimed. ISIS has been attacking them. Al-Qaeda has been attacking them. Other rebels, so-called rebels, actually they're terrorists. These terrorist groups have been attacking them. And bit by bit, our troops are getting bled and slowly, one by one, picked off and killed. Now, with the whole country going to hell, because Al-Qaeda has now seized power, Assad has completely been overthrown, and it's a complete free-for-all. We now have over 900 troops who are basically sitting ducks. And I'm asking myself, why are we in Syria? Number one. Number two, how is any of this constitutional and legal? Like, just stand back objectively. This is the act of an empire. So we have bases now in so many countries around the world, we can hardly keep track of them, with no congressional approval whatsoever. And again, it's part of these endless wars. And our troops are just put there as tripwires, and they're being attacked, and they're trying to put down insurgencies, and now we're finding out they're also being used to arm and fund and train our most mortal enemies, i.e. Al-Qaeda. So we're going to be training people, sort of like what we did in Afghanistan in the 1980s, where we trained the Mujahideen, who eventually became Al-Qaeda, who used that training to eventually attack us on 9/11. To show you how insane all of this is. So why do we have bases in that country? Why do we have nearly 1,000 troops in that country? There's no authorization from Congress. We're not at war with Syria. The Syrian government under Assad, for all of his flaws, and he was a murderer, no question, as I said, a dictator, a brutal dictator, but he never declared war on the United States. He was never our avowed enemy. Yet we're in we're in Syria, we're in the country of his, of his regime, and we're interfering and meddling in their internal affairs. I'm just telling you, Pull the troops out now. Syria is not worth the bones of a single U.S. soldier. Get that military base out. Get all of our troops out. We should have nothing to do with Syria. And the Kurds and the Turks now are going to fight it out in eastern Syria. The Alawites are going to fight it out with the Sunnis. The Christians are lucky if they're not all exterminated. I'm telling you, the country now is most likely going to break up into 1,000 pieces. And if you think the civil war of the last 13 years has been bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. And let me just say one other thing. You have Al-Qaeda now running Syria. It's a mortal threat to our troops. It's a mortal threat to our bases, our people all across the Middle East. But it's also going to destabilize Lebanon. Syria borders Lebanon. Syria borders Jordan. Syria borders Israel. This is going to destabilize much of that entire region. And our own CIA was involved in putting these Islamist terrorist thugs in power? Where is Congress? This should be a full-scale investigation. The CIA is arming, funding, and propelling to power our own mortal enemies who have the blood of thousands of Americans on their hands, who perpetrated the worst terrorist attack on American soil in our history? I'm sorry, in my book, that's treason. That's sedition, my friends. By the way, what happened to the war on terror? Say what, Al-Qaeda now is our friend and ally? This is a mess, no matter how you look at it. It's time to bring all the troops in Syria home. Not today, yesterday. Agree, disagree. Should the United States stay involved and get involved even more in Syria? I say hell no. 7:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let's go to Michael in the great state of New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Michael, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Michael.
How are you doing this morning?
Good. Hey, I'm just happy I'm not in Syria.
I'm happy to be here in Manchester. One of my big concerns was what was going to happen between November 5th and January 20th, and it's all coming to fruition. You sit back and you watch, you can see what's going to be tomorrow, what's going to happen the day after that. You know what I'm saying? Now, this Syrian thing, I think what we should do, we all have that warning quarterback opinion. Mine is to say, let's contain it, don't get involved, arm up Israel. Iran took a big hit. Hezbollah took a big hit. Now, contain it, get our people out, and tell Vlad, calm down, Putin, relax. You lost this one. You got to lose this battle. What's China got to do now? They get their eyes open. They're seeing things that's going on, you know what I'm saying? So how are we going to react? Biden, he's not even control his own bowels. He's like that little monkey, with the symbol back in the day the guy had. He clapped his knees, that little monkey leg. Biden doesn't control anything. This is Obama. And it goes back to Hillary, Libya, they moved into Benghazi, Syria, the Red Line, the sand, all that. You had this mass migration from the Middle East and North Africa into Europe. We got the mass migration going on our southern border. Oh, this is beautiful. Still with me?
Well, Michael, you make a lot of very good points. And just to touch on the last one, you're going to see now many more so-called quote-unquote migrants now. They're going to pour into Europe, and they're going to try to pour into the United States. And look, believe it or not, this is going to shock people, but this is one of the few times that if these are legitimate Syrian Christians, okay, and I want to stress the word, these are real Christians from Syria, or Yazidis, or Kurds, who are, these are real victims. I would be very interested and I would be very open to taking some of them in. Because, look, Israel, and I love Israel. Please don't misunderstand what I'm about to say. But Israel is a nuclear power. Israel is one of the most formidable militaries in the world. Israel can defend itself. The Christians of Syria, like the Christians of Lebanon, or the Christians of Egypt, or frankly like the Armenian Christians, they are weak, they are defenseless, and they are very vulnerable. And what the Muslims in that part of the world have now shown, whether it's Turkey, the Turks, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. They've helped massacre countless Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, Christians. They now are looking to wipe out the Kurds in eastern Syria. They want to wipe out the Christians in the western part of Syria. The Turks now do what the Turks have been doing for 500-600 years. They are at war with Christianity and with Christians. So my fear is that with the rise of Al-Qaeda, with the rise of ISIS, with the rise of what's called Sunni fundamentalism, as opposed to the Shia who run Iran, and Al-Qaeda and ISIS represent that Sunni fundamentalism. They are going to exterminate every single Christian in Syria. And I'm telling you, I'm speaking now as a Christian. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. If you know anything about Syria and its history, and I want to credit Steve Bannon, because Bannon's been on this issue very good, in particular. This is the ancient cradle of Christendom. These Christians that in Syria and in Lebanon and in Egypt and in that whole part of North Africa and the Middle East are the oldest Christians in the world. They literally go back to the time of Christ. Now their churches are going to be destroyed and demolished. Their priests are going to be exterminated, wiped out, murdered. Many of them are going to be put up to the wall and massacred. I'm sorry, but this is a humanitarian nightmare. An absolute nightmare. And no one speaks for them. No one wants to protect them. So if they're genuine Christians, we have to vet them, obviously. But if these are genuine Christian refugees, then I am open to taking them in. Because they're genuine refugees. They need our help. And the same goes for the Yazidis. The same holds for the Kurds. Because I believe now there's going to be a massive bloodbath from this. And you've seen the same thing in Tunisia. You saw the same thing in Egypt. You've seen it. You saw it. You see all over the Middle East, wherever these Islamist fanatics take power, they massacre the Christians. And I just want to read a text I got from a very good friend of mine who knows that region very, very well. And I think he really hit the nail on the head. And he said, Jeff, the larger play is the same one that Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the neocons have long dreamed of. Topple Vladimir Putin. Destabilize what is left and allow Vanguard and BlackRock to colonize Russia. Syria is a bloody pawn on their deadly chessboard. And I agree. If you want, the ultimate end game is to bring down the Putin regime. And this is not speculation. This is not a conspiracy theory. Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, openly said that the goal of the Biden regime is to oust Putin from power and to degrade Russia militarily to such an extent that essentially they will become a defeated nation. Now, whatever you think of Russia and whatever you think of Vladimir Putin, if you know anything about Russian history, the Russians and Moscow see themselves as the protector of Christians in the East. It's like a mission for them. They see themselves as the heir to the Byzantine Empire. And it's not just Putin. It's the Russian leadership. They look at Syria, they look at Lebanon, they look at Armenia, they look at Iraq, they look at that part of the world, and they say, no one protects the Christians of the East. That's our role, that's our job. So what they really ultimately want is they want to overthrow the Putin regime. Because it's a nationalist regime. It's not a globalist regime. He is against the globalists. And what they want are the vast minerals and natural resources of Russia. They want to carve that thing up like a butterball turkey. For them, Russia is Ukraine, but on steroids. They can make more money in Russia than they can possibly dream of. And that's why they have funded this war in Ukraine to the hilt. That's why they've done everything they can to try to damage the Russian economy, to cause Russia to lose the war. It's not about democracy. It's not about human rights. It's not about stopping aggression. I mean, who are we to lecture the world? You got Joe Biden bragging yesterday, we armed and funded Al-Qaeda? The very people that murdered 3,000 of our own citizens? And we're going to lecture the world on morality? Are you kidding me? This is ultimately now about overthrowing Vladimir Putin and getting rid of any nationalist, any patriot, any person who opposes the New World Order. And Syria now is just, I thought it was very well said, it's a bloody pawn on their deadly chess game. And in the end, look, Assad is going to live a good life in Moscow. He stole at least £1 billion. Okay, he married a woman in England. He was educated in England. So he's got a lot of connections to England, if you're wondering why pounds. So he put a lot of money away in London banks. Long story short, they stole over £1 billion. Okay, that's a lot of money. So Bashar Assad's going to be well taken care of in Moscow. I'll tell you who's going to go down. It's the poor Christians in Syria. They're the ones who are going to bear the brunt of this. And I'm telling you, no one's going to cry for them. No one's going to put out a flag for them. The media won't give a damn. No one's going to be doing, Hollywood's not going to be doing any events or fundraisers. And so, like the Christians in Iraq who are almost gone, the Christians now in Syria may be exterminated. It is a slow-moving Holocaust. And that's why I'm praying and I'm hoping that Donald Trump, when he comes to power, tells the Islamists in Syria, hands off the Christians. Hands off. When he bombed ISIS to smithereens in his first term and broke their back, I can't tell you how many Christian lives he saved. And so, to me, that's my number one concern is our troops. My number one concern is American interests. But on the humanitarian front, I pray for those Christians in Syria. And these are just honestly good, simple, decent people who are now being persecuted, tortured, and murdered simply for their religious faith. No one any longer speaks for them. 617-266-6868. But Joey is celebrating. Obama is celebrating. And that tells you everything you need to know. 749 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. All right, giving you information, cutting-edge analysis you're not going to find anywhere else. Don't believe the media propaganda. There is no George Washington on the Mediterranean in Syria. These aren't a small d Democrats now that are in power. This is not some new day of freedom and human rights and, a victory for the people of Syria. No. Al-Qaeda just won one of the most spectacular victories for radical Islam. And the people of Syria are going to pay. And we're all going to pay. And my fear is, how high is the price? 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Tommy in West Virginia. Thanks for holding, Tommy, and welcome.
Yeah, Jeff.
Hi,
let's look back on history. Leah, good morning. Let's look back on history. What happened when George W. Bush got rid of Saddam Hussein? The country splintered up. Al-Qaeda went in, all kinds of terrorism. Religious minorities were persecuted. Then Obama gets elected. And I never will forget the Arab Spring. Anderson Cooper running around gleefully in Cairo, Egypt, like, oh, my God, look at all these Arab boys in their tight jeans. And they portrayed it that this is going to these countries become democracies. Hillary Clinton talking about Muammar Gaddafi when she says, we came, we saw, we killed them, and she just laughed it off. Those countries turned into disaster areas afterwards of where, as you said, radical Islamists came into power. What did they do? If I don't like the way you worship, I'm going to shoot you. And we are going to see a massive bloodbath in Syria. Syria is mentioned in the Bible several times. And if you look at the amount of Christians going back to 1900 percentage-wise in the Middle East as compared to now, it doesn't take a college education to figure out what is going on. They're being pushed out. They're being driven out. And, from the so-called liberal perspective, you would think that, look at our mindset in America of how liberals go out of their way to protect transgender rights. But when it comes to other parts of the world of other ethnic and racial minorities, you don't see that same kind of fervor. And God only knows what's going to happen with Syria. But as you said earlier, the Yazidis, they'll be gone. The Alawites, they'll be gone. The Christians will be gone. And there'll be all this hand-wringing from the NPR types. Oh, my God, what do we do? I was no fan of Muammar Gaddafi, but prior to him being overthrown, he was doing a massive infrastructure project of where he was going to bring water into the middle of the desert with a massive pipeline carrying water, which, guess what? They could have fed part of the Middle East by doing land grants and getting Libyans to become farmers. NPR will not talk about that. And, I don't know. I see what's going to happen. They're going to leave Trump with a mess on their hands, and it's going to be the same thing over and over again. Trump's foreign policy. No, there's a cause and effect. And when you overthrow a dictator, the rock and roll group from England, Who, had a song called "We Don't Get Fooled Again." Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Oh, bingo.
We don't get fooled again.
Tommy, perfect phone call. I could not have said it better myself. Tommy, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868. Honestly, we're lucky if it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. If we're lucky. My fear, and you nailed it, I think, beautifully, what happened in Iraq, worse than Saddam. Libya, worse than Gaddafi. Egypt, worse than Mubarak. My fear is going to be worse than Bashar Assad. Dan in North Andover. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Dan.
Long time. I haven't talked to you since before the election.
Yes, Dan, we did it, buddy, huh?
Not sure what's happened, but about 4 weeks ago, my business started getting really busy again, and things look good, and people are smiling, Jeff. It's weird. Anyway.
Well, Grace is in real estate, and she says the same thing. Ever since Trump won, she says she's getting calls. People want to sell their homes. They want to buy homes. She says the market now is taking off. She says you can tell just the election of Trump and the country starting to move again. So you're dead on as usual, Dan. Dan, what do you make of the fall of Assad and Al-Qaeda now seizing power in Damascus?
You don't have to worry about ISIS. That's the JV team, Jeff. Jeff, it's sad world. I have a good friend. He passed away a few years ago. He emigrated from Syria. Him and his brother, with a quarter in their pockets, they ended up being two of the most successful business owners you'd ever meet. Unbelievable people. And I remember when all this garbage started to go down about, 8-9 years ago. It started being popular. And I said to him, well, isn't Assad a bad guy? And he said, he has to be a bad guy. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you don't understand the country. He said, he keeps the Christians alive. That's not an easy job. And he said, the same thing with Putin. Putin's a bad guy. Putin's a bad guy. Putin keeps the Christians alive. In a country like Russia, that's not an easy job. And I think, honestly, I think Obama's, jumping up and down this morning because he got what he wanted. It's terrible.
Dan, if you had the ear of Trump, what would you advise him to do now at this point?
Honestly, Jeff, it's a mess. But I think he's got to be a strong leader and explain to both sides, we're not getting involved, and if you get us involved, it's not going to be pretty for anybody. And it's the only thing he can do. I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah, in other words, leave us alone. Like, we're not going to get involved. We're going to pull our troops out. But if you guys attack us, or our embassies, or our bases, or our people, you're going to rue the day. Is that your position, Dan, essentially? If I were him, I would put out an olive branch to Putin.
I'd get Putin the hell out of the Ukraine where there's no winner there. And I would back Putin with whatever he needs to fix the rest of the Mideast. That's what he was doing in office. When he was teaming up with Putin to fix our problems in the Mideast. It worked.
Interesting. Dan, as always, thank you very much for that call. Dan in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. It sounds like it's the Dan show. Look, these are the words that run chills up the spine of the globalists and the deep state. No new foreign wars. The deep state and the globalists are trying to seduce Trump into a foreign war. He has to resist. He has to double down on his domestic agenda, which is first and foremost secure both our northern and southern borders. It's energy independence, and it's deporting, starting with the illegal criminal migrants, deporting the migrants that are undermining our country. He has to double down on our domestic agenda. The seduction is to take in more migrants. You know what? Let the migrants in Syria go to the UAE, go to Saudi Arabia, go to Germany, France, and Great Britain. We're full. The inn is closed. There are no vacancies left in the United States. We're exceeding capacity. And you know, your dear friend, the ultimate agenda is to the deep state and the globalists see war and disease as an investment opportunity. And what Trump needs to do to undercut the CIA, undercut the National Security Agency, and for that matter, undercut the Pentagon, is declassify as many documents as possible and let the American public decide for themselves, is our federal government doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Look, for 12 out of the last 16 years, there's been an axis of evil in our government. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. And by declassifying the documents, you will put them in the place that they deserve, which is in hell.
Dan, you are on fire. Man, are you on fire. Dan, I'm just curious. Do you think the role of our CIA now in arming, training, funding Al-Qaeda, and even elements of ISIS in Syria, does that now need to be fully exposed? And is this treason, Dan?
You know, Jeff, quite honestly, I'm tired of investigations. You know, release the documents, declassify our activities in Syria, let the American people be the judge, the jury. Okay? Look, the United States reputation around the world, half the countries think we're a bunch of fools. The other half thinks we're a bunch of warmongers. Our reputation across the world is in tatters. Trump needs to announce we are sitting this one out. And full stop. We're going to look. Barack Obama, the Clintons, and Joe Biden. Nation building has been an epic fail. Wherever they have stuck their nose, the countries have gone from bad to worse. And we need to step aside, focus on our domestic agenda, declassify, let the American people judge, and make our lives and make our country great again. It would be great if we could rescue the Syrian Christians, but you know what? We can't be the savior of the world. We have to save our own people first. Charity begins at home. Jeff, I'm like you. I'm a Catholic Christian. Charity begins at home. We got to take care of our own people first and foremost. And when we get to the point in our country where we have such excess and largesse, and we can help other countries and other peoples across the world, God bless. But we're not there. We're far from it. Trump has to resist the seduction of another foreign war.
Dan, I got to tell you, this is an outstanding, and one of the best calls. One of the best calls I've had in a long time. Dan, thank you very much for that call. Now, big news over the weekend is as this disaster in Syria was unfolding, Trump met with Zelensky at the reopening of Notre Dame, or the restoration of the ceremony for the reopening and restoration of Notre Dame Cathedral. And by the way, I've got to say, I agree with Trump, not 1,000%. I want to give kudos to the French. They really deserve this. From what I saw, the pictures and the reaction of people who went in, but the pictures that I saw, they did an incredible job. I mean, it is beautiful. They restored it to its original authenticity 900 years ago, because I remember I've been to Paris multiple times. And when when I saw the Notre Dame Cathedral, it's a cultural jewel of the West and really of Western Christianity. And they did an absolutely outstanding job. I mean, really, the French should be extremely proud of themselves. But, let that go. Trump met with Zelensky, and Zelensky was not happy. He was stone cold. You can tell. I mean, Trump had some harsh words for him. And he said, look, he told both he and Putin, you're going to have to cut a deal. You're both going to have to make compromises, but this war has to end. And if there's a silver lining in this absolute tragedy and disaster, really it's a debacle in Syria, it's that it has exposed that Russia now is weak or weaker. It's been weakened, and it's taken a real blow to Russian prestige and Russian influence. Putin now is so bogged down in the war in Ukraine, he couldn't save his partner and ally, Bashar Assad. And so Trump feels and hopes that with all of the massive casualties now both sides are taking, because the war now in Ukraine is its most intense phase, maybe in the last 2 years. I mean, they are both now going at it hard. Ukraine defenses now are crumbling. Russians are slowly capturing cities and towns, but they are taking heavy losses. Trump is saying Russia's exhausted, Ukraine is exhausted. Now is the time to cut a deal. And hopefully he can have both sides reach a negotiated settlement. Macron has also said France will act as a mediator, and hopefully they can make a final settlement that will end the bloodshed and the bloodletting. And we can start to see a return to peace in the world. 617-266-6868. Fingers crossed. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Mark.
Jeff, I have to agree with Trump when he said this about this is not our fight. He needs to get the troops out of there because, Joe Biden's not going to do it. He needs to get the troops out of there. Whatever weapons that are left there, he needs to get out of there. And he needs to show this administration how a real administration does a withdrawal. Because I like you said, Jeff, I foresee another Afghanistan, and I do not want to see that again. But, Jeff, explain to me something. Why is it that our country, our government, always has to get involved in other countries' squabbles with other countries? It's not our fight. Why is this, Jeff?
Well, Mark, look, this is, I think, the mandate that Trump has. You're asking the $64,000 question. You really are. I'm just saying this as our leaders, our elites, not you and me, not the people, but our elites. We just can't mind our own business. We're always sticking our nose in other people's affairs. And you're right. It's practically every country in the world. And to be honest, that's what our founding fathers warned against. They said, we will no longer become a republic or be a republic. We will become an empire. The new Rome. The Roman Empire stuck its nose in everyone's affairs. And it constantly meddled and it constantly interfered to the point that it became hated. Or I like the way Dan in Plymouth put it, which is really accurate. Under the Roman Empire, half the world thought they were fools. The other half thought they were a bunch of warmongers. That's how the world sees us now. And, you know, if we were doing a great job policing the world, I'd say, well, okay, maybe let's look at it. But we're not. Every place we go, we leave worse. But our own country is now being invaded. Our own country has got serious problems. We're falling apart. Now, it's going to end when Trump comes to office. And ultimately, Mark, this is my answer. We have now traded constitutional republic and self-government for the poison chalice of empire and imperialism. We are now like the British Empire. And we believe we can be the world's policeman. And there is so much arrogance and pride and money and power and control. And I got to tell you, Mark, I've met many of our ambassadors. They think they run the countries that we send them to. Power really is an aphrodisiac. You know, the ambassador to Damascus, to Syria under Assad, he thought he was God. He acted like he was God. I'm just using him as an example. Well, you don't do what we say? We'll arm Al-Qaeda. Screw you. We'll give you a civil war. Screw you. Hundreds of thousands of people die. We don't care. You don't mess with me. You don't mess with us. And I think that's the poison chalice. That's why they fear Donald Trump so much. Because he wants to stay out of Syria. He wants to end this war between Russia and Ukraine. He wants to have peace finally in the Middle East. He doesn't want a war with China. He wants to contain China. In other words, he's going to starve the military-industrial complex. He's going to make us a republic and not an empire. And Mark, I'm telling you, there are very powerful interests that want to stop him at all costs. Final word to you, Mark.
I agree with you on this. A lot of this has to do with screwing up Trump's presidency once he gets in. Let's leave him with a mess that he has to clean up. But you know what, Jeff? Let's be honest with each other. Let's be honest with everybody in this country right now, okay? That our government has been getting involved with other people's squabbles for decades upon decades. And what it is all end up being about? Money, Jeff. Let's sink something into a war. Let's give money and we can get kickbacks. It's going to be the Ukraine all over again, Jeff. It comes down to money. And when you follow the money, you find the culprits.
Bingo. Mark, drop the mic. You nailed it. You nailed it. And for our military-industrial complex, Syria has been big money. And if the whole thing falls apart, it's going to continue to be big money. Just like Ukraine is big money. And the biggest pot of gold? Russia. That's why they ultimately want Putin's regime to fall. So, my friends, don't buy the media propaganda. Syria has fallen to Al-Qaeda. 8:20 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, a lot of news this weekend. Wasn't just obviously the fall of Assad in Syria and the rise of Al-Qaeda and the jihadists who now rule that country. Trump, as I've been mentioning throughout this morning, was in France, in Paris, for the opening ceremony for the restoration and reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, Notre Dame, as they say in French, and it was a triumph. There's just no other way to put it. He dominated the entire event. Unlike Joe Biden, when he goes to an international event, he wasn't there shuffling his feet, half gone, not knowing where to look, not knowing what to say, lost. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Trump dominated and commanded the room. He was forceful. He was loud. He had a power handshake with French President Macron. Leader after leader after leader walked up to him, congratulated him. He was shaking hands with everybody, had side discussions, as I mentioned, with Zelensky, with Macron, with the Prime Minister of Italy. You can see that America is back. And Trump is back in command and in full form. Now, one of the things that took place, and this is a bit of a side story, but it's in a way very telling. And so, as you know, Trump was there at the ceremony and 2 seats away from him because Joey couldn't make it. He's too old. Joey couldn't make it to the reopening. It's a long flight to Paris. Joey needs his nap time. So he sent Dr. Jill Biden. You notice I said doctor. Dr. Jill Biden in his place, along with his daughter, Ashley. Well, who was sitting next to Trump, maybe about 2 seats away? Yep, Jill. And what everybody commented on, MAGA world in particular, was how fawning Jill Biden was. How she looked at Trump with that gaze, almost as if she was, I'm serious, almost as if she was attracted to the guy. She had this look, I mean, it was, let's put it this way, it was positive. It was, I mean, so, by the way, many people, Trump believes she actually voted for him. Trump has said in private, he's convinced that both Jill and Joey voted for him in private. That's how much they hated Kamala Harris. Well, I can just tell you, when you look at that picture and just her overall demeanor, let's put it this way, it was a lovin'. It was a lovin'. It was very friendly. She was, she was gazing at him, in a way at times, really. And you said, is she like attracted to him? He's the boss. He's in command, unlike her husband. Anyway, Trump said they had a very nice, very wonderful, warm conversation. She was polite. He was very polite to her. And it unleashed a frenzy on social media in which, I'm not kidding, people were like, yep, the pictures are worth 1,000 words. She voted for him. She was warm. As one person put it, I just want to find someone that looks at me the way Jill Biden looks at Trump. A Trump supporter posted this on X. Another one. Jill Biden looks like she's in love with the boss Trump. 100% confirmed she voted for Trump. Another one. She voted for him. It's settled science. I got to tell you, I wish my wife would look at me the way Jill Biden, was looking at Donald Trump. Now, let me just say this, and a lot of people made this point. Look at how fast everyone was warming up to the so-called fascist dictator Trump. I mean, it's not just Dr. Jill, who apparently couldn't resist his world-class charm. It was foreign leader, foreign statesman after foreign leader after foreign statesman. The charisma, the command and presence, the fact that Trump is a force of nature. You can feel it throughout the entire ceremony. And so, feeding off of this frenzy, Trump being Trump, he's got a new cologne line. I don't know if people know this, but he's actually got a new cologne line. It's called Fight, Fight, Fight. I swear. Fight, fight, fight. Well, he put up the picture of Jill Biden just sort of, looking at him in this glowing fashion. And he writes underneath it, a fragrance your enemies can't resist. That's the caption that read for his cologne, Fight, fight, fight. So Trump is even, hey, he's even using it to hawk his own cologne line. No, Donald, it wasn't the cologne. It was you. More next. 8:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. So, anyway, yeah, people are texting me, emailing the Kuhner man, say, come on, Jeff, are you serious? I'm like, look at the pictures. They're everywhere. Yes. She was looking at him like she wanted to tear Trump's clothes off. You want to talk about sex appeal and animal magnetism. And then to me, what's hilarious is that Trump takes that picture of her looking at him in this, honestly, this loving, forlorn fashion. Like, why can't my husband be a man like you? Or at least, I don't know, sentient like you. Awake like you. And he's got the cologne. He pushes out the Trump cologne, fight, fight, fight. And underneath it, the caption reads, a fragrance even your enemies can't resist. Like, it was the cologne that made her, get so turned on by him. 617-266-6868. Honestly, it's great to have him on the world stage again. The way the world is responding to him, you just feel like America is back. Now, as all of this was taking place, he came back, and on Sunday, he did an interview. In fact, it was over an hour 16 minutes to be precise, with Kristen Welker of Meet the Mess. Okay, Meet the Press on NBC. Rabid anti-Trumper. And man, was she rabid yesterday. I mean, she was honestly if she could tear him limb from limb, she would have done it. You got to see the interview. The whole interview is him every 30 seconds saying, wait, hold on, wait, let me finish, wait. No, just wait, hold on. It was like she just wanted to tear his head off. It was hostile. It was rude. It was disrespectful. It was belligerent. Now, look, it's up to Trump. I'm not going to tell him who to interview, who not to interview. But even at one point, he even said to her, he goes, you're so ridiculously biased. He goes, if you weren't so biased, you actually have some potential and some talent. I mean, he was putting her in her place. But, after a while, how many times do you have to keep giving interviews to the lying fake news media before you realize they're not interested in being fair, they're not interested in being objective, they're not interested in getting at the truth. They are there to hurt you, damage you, derail you, and ultimately destroy you. This is just gotcha journalism. It's propaganda. She is a paid corporate assassin for the Democratic Party. That's what Kristen Welker is. Now, Trump did, however, make some very important news. And this has now liberal heads exploding all across the country, here in Massachusetts, in California, in Illinois, in New York, in blue states everywhere. Liberals this morning are on the warpath. Why? She asked him in particular 2 questions. The first one, Trump has now vowed on day 1, he is going to unleash Tom Homan. You are going to see Border Patrol, ICE, law enforcement conduct some of the biggest raids and deportations in the history of the United States. And her question was, well, maybe the parents who came here are illegals. But if their children, anchor babies, who were born here and are given automatic citizenship, will they be deported as well? And are you willing to break up families? Are you willing to go that far? Listen now to the question and Trump's response. Roll cut 6, Mike.
Parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are
You're talking
Tom
about
Homan.
separation?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your borders are, Tom Homan said, they can be deported together.
Correct.
Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep those. Well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you got to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work.
So, and then they continue, okay? They continue that Trump says, look, I know the games you and the media are going to play. You're going to, when we start deporting them, you're going to find a baby that cries or a child that cries or a mother that cries and says, no, I don't want to be separated from my child. No, no, no. He goes, so I know the game that you guys are going to play. So, no, a child should be with their mother and father. If they came here illegally, then don't separate the children from the parents. Send the whole family back. You should have thought of that before you came into our country illegally and had a child on our soil. Listen to Trump saying, I know I'm going to take a lot of flack for this. I know PR-wise, you and the media are going to try to do everything possible to damage and discredit and attack me, but I am committed to massive deportations no matter what. Roll cut 6A, Mike.
I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal, and they show the woman, and she could say, by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job, and you have to have a series of standards and a series of laws, and in the end, look, our country is a mess.
Yes. Look, he's completely right. Now, but Jeff, whoa. You mean you want to deport so-called citizens? The children, Jeff, the children. Well, I'm sorry. The mother or the father or both came in illegally. They broke our law. They have no business being in our country. They must go back. Now, you decided to have a child on American soil. That's your problem. That's on you. How is that our problem? You have to explain to your children why you decided to do that. Because you had no business being here in the first place. That's number one. Number two, as many people have rightly pointed out, say they're from, I'm just going to make up a country now, Guatemala, okay? Say Guatemala, Colombia, it doesn't matter, China, Moldova, Russia, it doesn't matter. If they have a child in another country, i.e. the United States, that child is also a citizen, say, of Guatemala. If the parents are from Guatemala and they have a child in the United States, the child's also a citizen of Guatemala. It's not like the child's going to be left in some kind of illegal limbo. It's not as if you send them all back to Guatemala or Venezuela or China or Moldova or Russia or Ukraine, or I don't care, take your pick. They're going to say, no, the parents can come back, but not the child. No. The child is also an automatic citizen of the country that the illegals are from. So I don't want to break up a family either. You guys came in together, you're going to leave together. And you should have thought of having an anchor baby before you decided to have one. If you're worried now about the consequences, oh, my child has American citizenship, why is my child being deported along with me? Well, you shouldn't have had the child here in America. You tried to scam our system, and now we're not going to let you scam our system or abuse our laws. So let me ask all of you, is Trump right? Is Homan right? if they're going to do mass deportations, should the entire family be sent back? Or should they keep the children here and only send back either the parents, or let's say it's a single mom and she came here and has a child, an illegal and an anchor baby? Should the mother be sent, or, as liberals are now arguing, should they be allowed to stay? Because their children or their child is an anchor baby who now has citizenship. So by having citizenship, you therefore should not and cannot remove the parents, because the parents now would be separated from the child. I say send them all back. You came in illegally. You knew the consequences. You abused our laws. Unless you want your child to be separated from you, they go with you. But that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. And then Trump drops the hammer. He tells Kristen Welker something else he's going to do on day one. And my friends, all hell has broken loose. What did Trump say? Now, 8:49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is from 617. Jeff, please remind Kuhner Country how Ike did it in the 1950s, the mass deportation. And look, 617, you're dead on. Eisenhower deported literally several million illegal aliens. And he sent the whole families back. And he didn't care if they had anchor baby children. Let's say one or two, whatever, a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old that happened to be an American citizen. They go, what do you want? You want the child to be put in an orphanage? Or in foster care? Or do you want to leave as a family? Because the parents came in illegally, they're leaving. They're going to be deported. The question is, do you want your child, yes or no? Now, I think most humane, civilized people would say the child belongs with the parents. So, go back. I mean, then mostly it was Mexico that the immigrants came from, and so they were deported to, the illegals came from, and they were deported to Mexico. But my point is, there was no hand-wringing and pearl-clutching and, oh, the children, oh, no, we can't send the child back who's a citizen, so keep the parents here. No. They came in illegally. They must be deported, period, full stop. And I'm with Trump. We're not for breaking up families, so send the kids with them too. Well, Jeff, they're citizens. Well, too bad. Talk to the parents. It's their fault. Agree, disagree. And then this is from Rick, who texted me on my personal cell phone. Jeff, the illegal invaders use their anchor babies as props and human deportation shields. Bingo. That's obviously, that's the reason why they come. The illegals pour in, and then they have a child here, or children. And then the children get citizenship, which entitles the illegals, by the way, to all kinds of welfare benefits through the child. And then they say, well, now it's a shield against deportation. It's an anchor, hence the term anchor babies. Well, you can't deport us. Why? Because my child is an illegal. My child is a legal American citizen. Well, too bad. Too bad. You're illegal, so we're kicking you out. So do you want to take Junior? Yes or no? And our policy, the more humane policy, is take Junior with you. Don't worry. He'll still be a citizen of the country you're going back to. To me, I'm sorry, but it's time to play hardball. Enough is enough. Now, Kristen Welker then asked Trump about another seminal pledge, which he has now reaffirmed. And I have been waiting for this almost my entire life. Finally, a president is willing to challenge birthright citizenship. Listen now, so-called anchor babies or birth tourism. Listen now to President Trump saying, on day one, I will issue an executive order that revokes birthright citizenship. Welker then says, but that violates the 14th Amendment. And Trump basically says, well, I guess we'll have to take it to court. Roll cut 6B, Mike.
You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
Well, we're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
You know, we're the only country that has it. You know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need two, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action.
Now, by the way, I'm telling you right now, these two are the key takeaways. There's other takeaways from the whole interview, but these two are the two major takeaways. Liberals, when I say freaking out, liberals are losing their minds. The media is apoplectic. They're going to get a heart attack. Somebody's going to get, I'm telling you, CNN, MSNBC, someone's going to drop dead on the air. The Democrats are foaming at the mouth. He's going to deport children. Oh my God. He's going to send back entire families. How can he do this? So they're going nuts. And on birthright citizenship in particular. So as you know, the argument that the left has made for a very long time is that the 14th Amendment, which was passed in the wake of the Civil War, and I'll get to this in a minute, guarantees anybody that comes to America and plop, you have a baby, non-citizen foreigners, they just show up, illegal aliens, they show up, the woman steps 1 foot on American soil, plop, out comes the baby. The baby automatically is given what's called birthright citizenship. The baby is considered a full American citizen with all intended rights, benefits, and privileges. And the argument, and you heard Kristen Welker say, but the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. Notice she deliberately took out a key clause, what she read. It's not just people born in the United States. She forgot to add in, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And that changes the entire meaning of the 14th Amendment. Because if you know anything about history, the 14th Amendment clearly was intended to free the African American slaves in the South. That was the reason why the 14th Amendment was written. That is exactly why it was passed. It had nothing to do with immigration. It had nothing to do with foreigners coming into our country. It had nothing to do with, oh my God, if someone comes to America and they have and their, the wife or the girlfriend or whatever has a child, well, they're automatically American citizens. That's a monstrous lie. It's a complete perversion of the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was specifically intended American citizens born on American soil, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, i.e., African Americans were never considered full citizens. Now, after the 14th Amendment, they are full citizens. After they have gotten rid and dismantled slavery. That was the point of the 14th Amendment. It wasn't come to America, have a baby, and suddenly the baby is an American. Now, furthermore, and Trump touches on this, notice no other country in the world has this. Literally. No other country in the world has birthright citizenship. It's a modern perversion exploiting the 14th Amendment to try to entrench open borders and unlimited immigration into the country. That's what this is. France doesn't have it. Switzerland doesn't have it. Canada doesn't have it. Australia, New Zealand, China, I don't care, take your pick. Japan, Russia, India, take your pick. Israel, take your pick. I don't care. Take your pick. No other country in the world has it. You know why? Because it's insane. It defies all logic and common sense. You go to France on a tourist visa. Okay, I go to France on a tourist visa. I'm just going to pick France out of a hat. And Grace is pregnant, and she has a baby in France. You think the French suddenly say, well, no, your child's a French citizen, was born in a French hospital. They say, no, your child is a citizen of the country you and Grace come from. Where you guys, American citizens? Your child's an American citizen. Bye. Your child's not entitled now to welfare benefits in France, a citizenship in France, a passport in France, residency in France. And by the way, that extends to you now. I mean, it's a complete perversion of citizenship, sovereignty, and the rights of a nation to control who's a citizen and who's not a citizen. Now, let me just make one final point, and then I want to open it up to the phone lines. 617-266-6868 is the number. Trump's executive action. By the way, the ACLU is losing its mind. Lawrence Tribe, that shyster lawyer who's been trying to destroy Trump now for decades. Okay, all these Harvard liberal leftist constitutional scholars are saying, oh my, no, it's an attack on the 14th Amendment. Show me in the 14th Amendment or in any subsequent Supreme Court decision ever, that says the intention of the 14th Amendment was to allow anybody, any foreigner, any non-citizen, any illegal alien to come. So you come into our country illegally, but because you're 9 months pregnant and plop, out comes the baby. The baby now magically becomes an American citizen? Even though you, the husband, are not, and you actually came in illegally? Under what theory of citizenship, under what theory of sovereignty? This is make-believe BS. It's constitutional legal bullcrap. Take it to the Supreme Court. Take it to the Supreme Court. And that's the only thing I agree with. ACLU right away says the day Trump signs that executive order, i.e. day one, he goes immediately, we're going to take this to the court, all the way to Supreme Court. Yes. Yes. I want the Supreme Court to rule on this issue. And I'm telling you, minimum 5 conservative justices are going to rule in favor of Trump. Even Roberts, I think. I don't know how he can twist himself into a pretzel to uphold birthright citizenship. It's going to be at least 6-3. It's going to be 6-3. We're going to end this farce once and for all. I personally would prefer Congress stepping in and just saying, cut out this nonsense. But but if Trump is not confident that the Republicans will hold the line, that the rhinos will cave, fine. Executive order, let's take it to the Supreme Court. And let's end this once and for all. And let me say one final thing. It is getting so badly abused. And I think this is why the Supreme Court's going to rule in favor of Trump. We're not talking one baby here, one baby there, bad enough as that would be. It's illegals coming in by the millions who are being told by Soros-backed NGOs and Soros lawyers, have a baby. Yeah, have a baby. When you have the baby, they won't deport you, and the baby's going to get you all these welfare benefits. So have a baby. You also have what's called birth tourism. Since 2000, just China alone, Chinese citizens, usually members of the Communist Party, will fly to the United States, and for some reason, I don't know why, but they love California or Florida. For whatever reason, they're not going to Montana or South Dakota. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's either Florida or California. And they have delivered 200,000 anchor babies. That's just from China alone. Literally, the Chinese officials have admitted this. They pay a first-class ticket to come to America. You can see the mom is like 9 months. She's bursting. She's got a week to 2 weeks. Come here, land in America. Both of them, they're tourists. They're tourists. They're on a tourist visa. They're complete non-citizens, members of the Communist Party. Put her up in a nice hotel. Put her up in a hotel for a few days. Oh no, my water's breaking. Bang, send her to the hospital. They pay the full freight. They pay the hospital fees. Out comes the baby. Hello, passport, citizenship, all the benefits. They end up going back to China. And now they know their kid has a free ticket to America. The Saudis do it. The Russians do it. The Indians do it. Everybody is now doing it. Everybody. It's a booming business in the United States. Now, you tell me, why should we be giving our mortal enemies a free passport to have their children come to America and simply by virtue of being born in a hospital can go back to their country and they're American citizens with full rights, full benefits, full privileges, and can come and go and live in America and get jobs in America and come and go as they please? It is insulting. It is abusive. It is a violation of our laws, our sovereignty, our dignity, and it is being abused and exploited by our mortal enemies. You go to China and have a baby in China, your baby is not a citizen of China or any other country in the world. Now, you're going to tell me that when they freed the slaves in the South, that those who put together and crafted the 14th Amendment were really saying, no, we want people from China or Guatemala or Egypt or Moldova to come to America as tourists or guests or foreigners or whatever, as illegals. And they'll just have a baby. And then we'll just let them be a citizen. Now, no way does this hold up in front of the Supreme Court. I stand with Donald Trump. He is the only president in my lifetime that has shown the guts, the bravery, the determination to challenge this perversion of the 14th Amendment and to uphold the rule of law and our sovereignty and our rightful citizenship. Birthright citizenship is a massive fraud, and it's got to end. So let me ask all of you, ultimate question, 617-266-6868. Should someone coming to America is not a citizen and not a permanent legal resident, They're either a non-citizen on a tourist visa or they're here illegally. If they have a baby, should that anchor baby be awarded full citizenship? I say absolutely not. What say you? Agree, disagree? 617-266-6868. John on the Cape. Thanks for holding, John, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff. And if I don't talk to you before Christmas, Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas. All the best to you and your family, John.
Thank you. I'm going to tie into what you just said because you are absolutely 1,000% correct on the 14th Amendment and the purpose of it. I'm going to add something to it, though. I remember reading this years and years and years ago because I used to live in Phoenix, so for 17 years. So the border issue's been going on for a lot longer than what Massachusetts has been dealing with it. There's somewhere, I can't remember where I read it. I think it's in one of our federal documents. It says that basically there's no such thing as being born in the United States, you automatically become a citizen, because if the parents come here illegally, they have an allegiance to their home nation. And they have an allegiance until they become American citizens and denounce their homeland's flag. And you have to do that. You know that. Becoming a naturalized citizen, you are denouncing your allegiance to Canada to become an American citizen. Well, if they have not done that, they still have an allegiance. Let's say a Mexican comes over here. They still have an allegiance to the Mexican flag. Therefore, their offspring do not automatically become American citizens.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. John, I agree with you, as I like to say, not 100, but 1,000%. And look, I would ask you this, John, just to use common sense, okay? And remember, our founders, all they had was common sense. The drafters of the 14th Amendment were very learned, highly intelligent, patriotic men who had nothing but common sense. They were dealing with the issue of the Civil War and slavery in the South. And so you have all these African-American slaves who are now freed. And they're like, well, what do we do with them? And like, well, we have to give them citizenship. And that's how they draft the 14th Amendment. Now, and so this idea that somehow it applies to people from all over the world, I mean, it's such a perversion and misreading of history. But let me ask you this. You have a home. A squatter breaks into your home. That's what an illegal is. It's a squatter. An illegal immigrant or an illegal alien is a squatter. And suddenly now they break into your home and they start living in your home. And then they have a baby in your home. Is the baby now automatically entitled to be a member of your family? Think of the logic of what they're saying. The answer is no. Of course not. 9:20 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. Okay, let me ask all of you. Is President Trump correct? Is it time to end birthright citizenship, i.e. anchor babies, birth tourism, all of it? Kristen Welker, many of the media are saying it violates the 14th Amendment. Trump is saying, well, let's take it to the Supreme Court. What say you? 617-266-6868 is the number. This is from Marianne on Messenger, and she makes an extremely good point. Jeff, executive action is not good enough. This needs to be law. And what I don't understand is why. Why do Americans want these people over here to disrupt our way of life? Because you know what happens when they come. They come for the American dream, but then they want to turn the American dream, can't say this on the air, into the crap hole they just came from. This needs to be law. because some of them want to overtake our country completely, not executive action. And she goes, next time, if there's a progressive, liberal nutjob president like Joe Biden, you know they're going to start bringing them in again in droves. I have been in Walmart behind these people that come into this country. They have 6, 7 little children, and she's pregnant with more. I see it all the time. And out comes their EBT cards. And their carts are full of junk food. I'm also starting to see it as well in Publix. Because Publix, what some people consider high-end shopping, but hey, if you and I are paying for it, why not? Publix, yeah, my bad. Publix, I see it all the time. Illegals, the woman's got multiple kids, pregnant, and the shopping cart is full. I mean, full to the brim. And out comes the EBT, out comes the food stamps, and you and I are paying for all of it. And I know it's Publix down there in Florida, but here it's, Big Y or, Stop and Shop or wherever I go. And cost is it's no limit to these people. And that's because it's all on our dime. So they come here illegally, out comes the baby, and then they're swimming in government benefits and government welfare. This has to stop. It is going to bankrupt us. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Heather in Rockland. Thanks for holding, Heather, and welcome.
Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure, Heather.
I wanted to make one quick comment, a shout out to the Front Street Bridge people. We all got together Friday night and had a wonderful time, and I actually finally got to meet Tony in Florida. He's a caller. He calls you all the time. Tony in Florida. We talk all the time, but I never got to meet him in person. So I met him and his lovely wife. It was a wonderful, wonderful time Friday night with all the bridge people. We were doing the Trump dance too. It was fun. Doing the Trump, we all doing the Trump dance.
Heather, before you make your major point, because you're an intelligent caller, and I want to pick your brain and the audience.
Okay.
In the interview, Trump further elaborated, and he's also done this elsewhere. He said, "Look, at a bare minimum, what I want is that at least one of the parents, if a couple is going to come to the United States, one of the parents at a minimum has to be a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident. And then if they have a baby on U.S. soil, yes, the baby can then be a citizen. But it's got to be at least one of the two is either an American citizen or a green card holder. Do you agree with that, or do you think both parents should be American citizens and then they have a baby and then it's automatically a citizen?"
I think in a perfect world, I'd say probably both, but I would say I would be okay with just one. And here's why, because, I'm just think of college kids. Like, let's just take this example. Like, some college kids, they go abroad, they study abroad, they could meet their future wife down, you know what I mean? So this kid, there's so many different scenarios that I don't know if it would be necessarily fair. You know what I mean? Like, I think I'd have to think that through, but I'm just thinking like, maybe somebody goes abroad and studies abroad for a couple of months. They happen to meet, the love of their life over there, wherever they go, and they decide to get married. Should we punish that other the wife or the husband because they met,
let me ask you this, though, Heather. Like, for example, no, but I mean, many people, they marry a foreigner, which is fine. It's nothing wrong with that. And then you wait till the person becomes a U.S. citizen. And then you can have children. In other words, asking them to wait until both are citizens, is that putting, I'm asking you, too much of an undue burden? Do you think Trump is saying yes? Trump is saying, look, give me one person who's a citizen or at least a green card holder, and we've got something to work with. I take it you agree with him, right?
Yeah, I think I'd have to really. I haven't really thought about it.
Heather, do me a favor. Hang on. You know, Mike, you're killing me with these breaks. I want you to know that, Mike. Heather, hang on. I'm going to come right back to you. Don't touch that dial. 9:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, I want to go right back to Heather in Rockland. Just before I do, it is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by sponsored by Mario's. My bad. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. And it really is a play off of Trump's answer to Kristen Welker about, well, if the anchor babies, they can either go with the illegal parents when we deport them as a family, or we can separate the child from the parents. Take your pick. So let me ask you, what would you prefer? If your parents were deported and you were here legally, would you rather go with your parents? Would you prefer to go with your parents if they're being deported and you are here legally? A, yes. B, no. I'm a yes all the way, obviously. I don't want to be sent to an orphanage or a foster home, or I want to be with my parents. But that's me. You can vote on our webpage, WRKO.com/Kuhner. WRKO.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in National ER. You can also vote via X. I'm very active on X, as I was last night. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUHN as in National ER. Heather in Rockland. Please, Heather, pick up where we left off.
Oh, thinking about it a little more, I think I don't think that because sometimes it takes so long to actually become a U.S. citizen, and I think the person that isn't, I don't know if we should make them wait. I'd have to really, really think about it.
No, I understand, but you're thinking, look, you're saying, at least one of the parents should be a citizen, or as Trump puts it, at a minimum, a permanent legal resident, a green card holder. And if they have a child here in America, then the child becomes a citizen. Now, I'm just curious, what do you say to the argument that liberals make that the 14th Amendment guarantees anybody in the world, if they make it to America and they have a baby, that the baby is automatically given American citizenship? Do you believe in birthright citizenship, or like me, do you think it's a disgusting fraud and a con?
I think it's a disgusting fraud. Let me back up. When I said I think that the person should be, I think they have to be a legal U.S. citizen. I don't think that if one person got married to somebody else and wanted to have a kid, they have to be a legal, none of this green card or none of this like visa now. No, a legal U.S. citizen marries like a foreigner, okay? I'm okay with that. And if they want to have a child, I think that's okay, but they have to be a legal U.S. citizen. None of this green card nonsense. No. Send them all back. If they're legal here, if the parents are illegal, and they have children that, they have, like the anchor babies, I'm sorry, send them back. The kids don't have a choice. If they're young, if they're, underage, under 18, they don't really have a choice. They're just going to have to go with their parents. I'm sorry. I'm sick of these illegals coming in here and using and taking all our resources. It was supposed to be a melting pot. Back in the day, when our ancestors came from Italy and Ireland and other places, it's a melting pot. They came in here, they immersed into the American culture. But these people coming in today are not. And can I just give a personal story?
Yes, go ahead, Heather.
And I know I'm talking too much. Okay, so my father, he just passed away on the end of September, but he married, we call her the mail order bride from China. been married 5 years. She conned him into marrying him, basically. He dies now, and and my father tried to get her to learn English, and she didn't want to learn English. She didn't want to do anything, right? He basically took care of her, right? Now he dies, and she expects us to take care of her. I'm like, if she's not, first of all, it wouldn't be me, but she's talking to my other sister, my poor sister, that's the executor of the state. And, she says, oh, your father said you take care of me. Your father said you take care of me. I'm like, she's out of her mind. You have your own family to take care of. She's got to figure this out. And I said, second of all, January 20th, she'll be deported, hopefully.
So she doesn't have even.
Enough already.
So she didn't have Heather. She didn't get a green card or anything when she was married with your dad.
No, she was here on a visa before she met my father, and then she stayed. So I don't know what happened, but I know there was a deportation for her, deportation for her, warrant for her deportation. So. But that was before she met my father. I don't think my father knew this. We're finding all this stuff out now. I don't think my father knew that. Do you know what I mean? It's a mess.
Well, that's probably one of the reasons why she married your dad, was to avoid being deported. And that's what I mean, Heather. It's a scam. They're scamming, and they're using our system and the loopholes to come into our country and really take advantage of us. And I think it's got to stop. And I'm with you. Deport them. I'm sorry. You came in illegally. You leave. And, tough luck. Well, I've been in America 5, 6, 7 years. I don't care. I don't care if you've been here 20 years. I don't care if you've been here 30 years. It's time to go. Go back. You should have thought of that before you broke our laws. Notice, Americans don't go around the world and go into other people's countries. I mean, I'm not saying we don't have our flaws. We have our flaws. We're not perfect. But we don't go around into other people's countries and just illegally setting up shop. I mean, we just don't do that. And I'm sorry. And you want to come to our country, you respect our laws, you respect our sovereignty, you respect our way of life, you come in legally through the front door, not like a thief in the night. Heather, thank you very much for that call. Let me throw this log on the fire. What about the Dreamers? And the reason why Kristen Welker pressed Trump hard on the Dreamers. And Trump said he was willing to make a deal with the Democrats potentially on the Dreamers. Now, we'll see if they actually do. But, the Dreamers, many of them are in their 20s. They're in their 30s. They're not, anchor babies. Well, they were, but they've been here now 20, 25, 30 years. Many of them, the only country they've known is the United States. And many of them are going to college. Many of them are working. Many of them have graduated high school. Their parents came in illegally. They had them. And they've just been in this country for so long, they're now adults. And the argument the left makes, and some Republicans make as well, is that the only country they've ever known is the United States. So to ship them back, to deport them along with their parents to their parents' native country, I'm just going to make one up, say Venezuela or China, or take your pick, would be a gross violation of their rights. Because you're essentially throwing them back into a country that is completely, technically foreign to them. They can't speak Chinese, they can't speak Spanish, they can't speak whatever the language is. They were educated here, raised here. So the argument is they should be allowed to stay. They should be a special exception. I disagree. An anchor baby is an anchor baby is an anchor baby. And to me, you deport the parents and the Dreamers. Well, it's not fair. Hey, don't blame me. Look at mommy and daddy. They should have thought of that before they came here decades ago, violated our laws, broke into our country, and then had a child, and frankly made a promise they had no right to make. This country's citizenship is not for these illegals to decide. You come in illegally with your parents, you send them back. You want to reapply to come back in? We'll consider it. But as far as I'm concerned, every dreamer should be deported and not given legalized status. But that's me. What say you? 617-266-6868. Bill in Florida. Thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Hi, good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Bill.
I want to make comment on the birthright citizenship and also a quick comment on Syria from earlier today. I'll start off by saying that I've been traveling in the Middle East for 25 years as a salesman, and there's a lot of examples that I've come across where companies that are buying U.S. goods from those regions, they get visas. They come to the United States with their pregnant wives. They have the babies. They get the passport. They go back. It's like an insurance policy. I've seen it with a Turkish gentleman. I've seen it with Egyptians. They work with the Coptic Christian churches within the United States. It's a whole syndicate that they set up so that they can bring their pregnant wives, have the babies, get the passport. So there are abuses everywhere, and that's just one example from the region that I know well. We're just circling back to the Syria situation.
Bill, if you don't mind, before we get to Syria, and I promise I'll let you finish your point, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking, look how this opens us up to a potential terrorist attack by an American, so-called quote-unquote American citizen. You know, you're right. It's being abused all over the Middle East. They come to our country, wives are pregnant, plop, they have the baby, baby's given citizenship, and then, Bill, what if that child's part of a terrorist network? They come back in, they bomb us. 949 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Okay, Bill in Florida dropped off for some reason, but let me ask all of you. Should we end birthright citizenship or the practice of anchor babies? Is Trump correct? 617-266-6868. He says he will pass or issue an executive order banning it on day one. The left, the Democrats, the ACLU are saying it's going to go straight to court. They will challenge and litigate. I hope it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. But that's me. Andy in Milford. Thanks for holding, Andy, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Yes, Trump is absolutely right to end the anchor baby situation. But, Jeff, the ACLU needs to be called out in Kuhner country because the J6 situation shined a bright spotlight on the inhumane, filthy, disgusting conditions that have existed in a lot of the jails and prisons across this country for decades. A powerful organization like the ACLU could have ended that decades ago, but they didn't. And the ACLU does not now have the moral standing to be Johnny on the spot with this anchor baby situation and now lecture us about human rights or what is fair.
That's an excellent point. No, look, Andy, I was just thinking as you were talking, notice how the ACLU will go out of its way to defend illegal aliens, non-citizens, foreigners, but doesn't give a damn about American citizens. And I'm not just talking about the J6ers. And by the way, Andy, I don't know if you saw the interview between Trump and Kristen Welker, but he told her to her face, on day one, I'm going to start pardoning a lot of these J6ers. I thought she was going to strangle them. I mean, you should have seen her. She was she was rabid. How dare you? How dare you? And he's like, no, they've been rotting in these gulags long enough. So again, he came out and said, most of these J6ers, they're going home. Day one, they're going home. But anyway, I'm not just talking about the J6ers, Andy. Criminals, okay? I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of criminals, but these are disgusting conditions. We should be ashamed of ourselves. I mean, urinating, defecating in the corner of a hole, essentially. The way they're not even allowed to take a shower, many of them, for weeks at a time. Put in solitary confinement. I mean, this is a form of torture. And it's all, hey, the ACLU doesn't give a damn about that. But I'll tell you this, when it comes to defending Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, when it comes to defending terrorists and jihadists or illegal aliens, or when it comes to defending foreigners and non-citizens, Andy, they're going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. As they told the Wall Street Journal, we're not going to spare any expense. We are going to challenge Trump's executive order the millisecond he issues it. Andy?
Yeah.
What say you, my friend?
Yeah, it's a glaring double standard. It's just, the thing is, there was an assumption for decades, Jeff, that inhumane conditions in the prison system, there was just an automatic assumption. Well, the ACLU is on top of that. Well, turns out they're not. And
well, Andy, no, that's where I kind of disagree with you a little bit. If you're a mass murdering terrorist or jihadist, yes, they're on top of that. If they send you to Guantanamo Bay and you're an Al-Qaeda, ISIS, mass murderer and terrorist, yes, they're on top of that, Andy. If you're an illegal alien, yes. But if you're just a plain old American citizen, Andy, blank you, ACLU doesn't care.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you on that point, Jeff. And
see, if you look at ACLU, Andy, it stands for American Civil Liberties Union. No. It's for Illegal Civil Liberties Union. That's what the ACLU really stands for, Andy. Andy, as always, thank you very much for that call. Excellent point. Brenda in Drake. Brenda, I hate to do this to you. I've got 1 minute left. Go.
Hi, I have a positive spin on it. If the illegals and their families take the money from the housing, all their allowances, take that and get themselves down to the border by plane, train, or automobile.
And there you go. And they can go back to the country they came from. Yeah, really, at this point, if I'm going to be giving them money, I agree with you, Brenda. I'll give you the money to go back home. And let's call it even, Steven. How's that? All right. Where did the time go? Bye-bye.